do you think is the difference between, I guess, the good side and the bad side of the manosphere?
It's the value. It's the prescriptive element.
Okay.
So the manosphere, the red pill itself is, I liken it to a data packet. So it's a ton of descriptive claims. The claim can be as basic as women like men who are taller than them, all the way up to descriptive like dark triad traits or other descriptive things which go into this data packet. Now, not all of them are true.
Sure.
And Evo Psych would go into this kind of data packet as well. Now, there's enough true claims which are in the red pill data packet that you can do a lot of damage with it, or you can do a lot of good with it, right? But it's all descriptive. None of it's prescriptive. The problem is that a lot of people pick up this data packet and decide that they're going to use it for necessary societal evil. They use it to do things like promote OF, promote degeneracy, promote promiscuity, promote all sorts of things which are antithetical to Christian ethics. And so, again, those people I consider to be bad actors, and their ideology needs to be destroyed just as bad as progressive leftist ideology needs to be destroyed.
Okay. Wow. So that is a very distinct difference there. We've already got super chats coming in. Dr. B84 with the $50 super chat says W collab. Moist Fista with the $5 super chat says salute to the both of you, banger of a collab. So the first question I'm going to ask from my Discord is actually a pretty thought-provoking one. It's from Great Sphincter, interesting name. It says Leviticus 21:14 says, quote, he must not marry a widow, a divorced woman, or a woman defiled by prostitution, but only a virgin from his own people. His question is, how do we honor this in the current year with the existence of the aforementioned OnlyFans and women being encouraged to be promiscuous? And please pardon me, because like I told you off the air, this is the first time I've been nervous on a podcast in a while, so please forgive me. He says, OnlyFans is prostitution, no two ways about it. I guess this applies to passport bros as well, who are marrying people from completely different cultures. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Levitical law has nothing to do with Christian ethics. That was a foundational law which was designed specifically for the people, a Jewish people group of the time.
Okay.
So this is not, Christians don't follow Levitical law, and we never have followed Levitical law.
Okay.
So we don't do animal sacrifices. We don't do those kinds of offerings. We wear mixed cloth garments and all sorts of different things. So we don't actually follow Levitical law. So that's one.
Okay.
Two, within the confines of Christian ethics, the prescriptors for these things are going to somewhat be dependent upon culture. Should you attempt, I think, to marry someone who's a virgin and keep yourself chaste? Yes, yes, you should. However, it's not a requirement in Christian ethics that you do so. It's not a requirement, in other words, that if you get married to somebody who's not a virgin, that somehow this is a sinful union or something like this. The whole point of Christianity is redemption and salvation through Jesus Christ. So many people find salvation after doing various bad things in their life, and they're able to reconcile those bad things and go on to live very, very good lives, in the faith. So this is allowable. It's just not preferable. It's not societally preferable. So as much of this behavior as we can try to run out of it, the better society ultimately will be, the closer you get to following the law of Jesus Christ in Christian ethics.
And just to get personal here, I'm no longer the most religious person in the world. I don't think I'm agnostic. I don't think I'm an atheist, because I believe that, at some point up the, chain of creation, there has to be an uncaused cause. And that uncaused cause is, what we call a deity. Talk to my audience, and really talk to my audience about guys like me who have sort of lost their faith in Christianity, because I've wanted more than anything to feel the way I used to feel about the Holy Spirit and God and the Bible. And it's almost like I've lost my way. So what would you tell to a guy like me who maybe happens to walk into your church and says, hey man, I've been down that road. I've been Catholic. I've been Baptist, and I kind of don't know where to go here.
You were a Catholic?
Yeah, I was.
You were raised in the Catholic Church, baptized?
No, I was raised in the Baptist church, baptized in the Baptist church. Then I decided to become Catholic, and then was baptized in the Catholic church.
Okay,
So
and then
that
you just
explains a lot.
left it all together.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasons why I left the Catholic Church altogether, and I guess I should follow my own advice here. You have to really separate the art from the artist. Like, we all know that Michael Jackson was more than likely a PDF file, but he's still one of the greatest performers ever, in my opinion. So I can separate that. But one of my main reasons was the stuff going on, with priests and their altar boys, if you know what I'm getting at. And like many people, it really put a sour taste in my mouth, in terms of just the whole idea of following God and this and that and the third. And so, like I said, I've been looking for something to sort of reignite my religious, my desire to be a part of a religious organization.
Why do you think? Why do you think in public schools that the amount of children who are SA'd is
Mhm.
significantly higher than the amount of children who get SA'd in a church?
No, why?
Do you know why?
No, I don't actually.
It's
No.
because predators go where the kids are. And so the thing is that it doesn't really matter what the venue is or the avenue is. You're going to find a large amount of predators who work in group homes. You're going to find
Okay.
a large amount of predators who work in schools. You're going to find a large amount of predators who are inside of various churches. The thing is that's interesting here is that inside the public works sector, in anything in regards to children, the predatory nature of the workers is significantly higher than they are inside of these religious groups. The
Right.
reason is actually because the religious groups do more to try to govern them out and pay more attention to that than the public sector secular groups do. So the Catholic Church got a pretty bad rap, right? But the Catholic Church is this global organization. It's massive. It's huge. It's a giant, massive machine with billions of people who are involved in it, with a large amount of clergy. So there's going to be some of that's happening, right? And there's even going to be some sects of it who enter into cover-ups, but it'll never be as bad as what you find in the private sector ever.
Okay.
So when people kind of lean away from church life and say, but it's because of the awful things which happen inside of this church or in this church, I just like to point out that the rates of this are significantly lower than you would find in other areas where children are present. So I think it's actually a really bad idea to lean away from the organization which does more to try to curtail that than you would find in secular organizations, right? So the idea here being this behavior I don't like and I want to see it curtailed. Well, why would you then move away from a group that tries to curtail it when the other group that you move to does less to curtail it? You see what I'm saying?
No, that makes perfect sense. It's almost like my wife and I, we watched this show on Netflix. It's called The Lincoln Lawyer. Very, very good show. I would highly recommend it. And I remember one of the characters was talking to the guy who's the Lincoln Lawyer. He says, the worst kind of criminal is a criminal with a badge. And so me losing faith in law enforcement, it's almost like the reason why I lost faith in the Catholic Church is the same reason I would lose faith in law enforcement. Well, there are so many dirty cops. Well, just like you said, dirty cops they're not really cops. They're just criminals with a badge. And I think the comparison that you made is that if it was going to happen anywhere, just like you said, they go where the kids are. Criminals go where the crime is. Predators go where the kids are. And
one guy just said, in fact, he said, well, yeah, but that's because there's more kids in public school. No, we're talking about per capita. Per capita, there's less of this. In fact, I have some studies that reach as high as 50 times higher inside of public school systems and public institutions. So let me give you some other examples of this.
Okay.
If you are an abusive parent, if you come from an abusive home, your father and your mother are physically abusive to you, your chances of actually being killed outside in a group home after you were removed from your abusive parents are actually higher than if they left you with your abusive parents.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
This is the conundrum which we find ourselves in, where the state itself is not very apt because they use psychological methodology instead of intuitive parenting, and they don't have the pair bond with the children that parents do.
Okay.
You end up with this same kind of issue. all over the place in any public institution. That's the case.
Wow. Good Lord, man. Now I understand why you've got, you ever heard of Super Hot Fire?
No.
He's a quote unquote battle rapper. His record is like 386,000 and Ghost 1978 wants to know. He says, ask Andrew why he chose Orthodox.
Well, so I found religion through logic before I found faith. So the thing is there's many different ways that people come to the path. The path is very narrow, but as you're instructed by Jesus Christ, knock and the door will be open to you. So what he's saying is, if you go looking for answers, you're going to find them, and you're never going to have to look very far, right? Okay. You're never going to have to look very far to find them, because the truth's written on your heart anyway. So the thing is for me, what you just gave, that's called the first mover argument, the uncaused cause, right? The unmoved mover.
Right.
That's referred to as the first mover argument, but it has some problems, because a secularist can say, okay, well, whatever this timeless being is, I think it's a spaghetti monster. Why would that make it the Christian God, right?
Right.
So there's some issues with the first mover argument, but there's far less issues with combination arguments. So you get to that with inductive reasoning, but then we can use logic to look at the impossibility to the contrary. The impossibility to the contrary, meaning if we take into account the transcendentals which exist, the laws of logic, and the metaphysical truths which you can't escape, laws of logic come in three. The three laws of logic is you have the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction. These are metaphysical truths that don't exist anywhere except in the mind, and yet they actually have to be real. There's no way around them. We can't even have discourse without them. We can't even function without them. So this implies that there's a mind, and if it implies there's a mind, and we already know that there has to be a cause, we've inductively figured out that there has to be a cause, and now we have a mind that has to go with the cause. So then we can look at some other metaphysical truths, like, would this cause have to be infinite? Well, it would. It would have to be timeless. It would have to be all-powerful, because it was uncreated and created itself. So all logical roads, even from the Platonic forms, and the idea of Socrates and Plato, which led to these Platonic forms. Orthodoxy, you could even say, has a lot of Platonic influence in it. And though we're not Platonists by any means, but you can come to this logically first, and then after you come to it logically, faith tends to come with it.
Holy God, good Lord, man. I think this conversation is way above my pay grade. And we're going to jump around with questions here because they're not in any particular order. Siege D in my Discord says, how does one get experience dealing with women and find a marriageable woman without becoming a degenerate? That's actually a very good question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat it for me? You're just a little quiet, dude. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. And that is not a complaint that I have ever gotten. I am as loud as they come. He wants to know. He says, how does one get experience dealing with women and finding a marriageable woman without becoming a degenerate?
Yeah, that's actually the answer is in the question. Like, why is there a requirement that you have to fuck women that you go on dates with? Why is that? Like, why is it a requirement that you need to sleep with them? Why is it a requirement you need to have sex with them? Why is it even a requirement you need to make out with them on the couch? Why do you think that it's impossible for men to have experience with women and understand female nature and things like this absent intercourse? That's the least compelling part of a relationship with a woman. It's literally the least compelling, most base part of this interpersonal dynamic. So sex is a weapon that is used by women, not by men. You understanding their nature is not a requirement that you stick your penis in their vagina. There's no such requirement that exists. And by the way, there's tons of virgins who are out there, virgin men, who understand intersexual dynamics just fine. These are logical assessments and experience-based and intuitive assessments that in no way, shape, or form require you to wet your willy. Why do you have to do that?
No, I mean, I hadn't even thought of it from that perspective. You could you really could get a lot of experience with women without having sex with them and still understand female nature. That had until just, and I don't know, maybe I'm a dumbass, but until now it had never occurred to me that how did you describe it? You said sex is the least what part of the
That's the
relationship?
that's the least important and most base part of the relationship, meaning not based, but base, like it's
Sure,
rudimentary,
sure,
right?
sure, sure.
The idea is this, that you could walk over to a complete stranger, female who's a complete stranger to you, pull down your pants and have sex with her, and she can have sex with you, right?
Right.
This requires no knowledge of interpersonal dynamics at all, right? It's just
That's
totally
true.
rude. It's
Very true.
totally rudimentary, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is like, I don't really understand what it has to do with intersexual dynamic. No idea what it has to do with that. What it is I think people cope, right? They want to
Sure.
fuck these women.
Yeah.
And so they make these claims. They say, well, how can I really understand how women operate? If it's like, you can understand it fine. Your logic,
Sure.
your reason, your intuition, and your inductive reasoning skills don't go away because you can't control your heart on.
You know, it's interesting. Now one would argue, well, the reason why we have to have sex with these women is because it is intersexual dynamics. And at this point, I would argue that that sex, the root word, I don't think it's talking about the actual intercourse. I think it's talking about the two sexes. So when it says intersexual dynamics, it's talking about the two sexes, male and female. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that too often what people do is they reduce everything to intercourse.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's really funny about it is like when you're married and you basically have intercourse at your will, your beck and your call, right?
Right.
You find out that it's the least important kind of metric when it comes to the assessment in your marriage, unless it's absent. Then it becomes very important. But if it's there, right, every other problem becomes paramount, and you realize that things like loyalty and this type of thing are going to take precedent over everything else. So I think ultimately you have a big problem with the idea that you cannot gain experience with women without having sex with them. It just seems absurd to me.
Okay. All right. Wow. Great answer, man. Jesus Christ. Andrew's black ex-wife with the $50 super chat says, ask Andrew why logic proves God, given the illogical nature of reality, such as how photons can be waves and particles which are opposites, breaking the law of non-contradiction. Quantum physics is illogical, but real.
It's really funny that you say that. So you're talking about the double slit experiment.
Yes.
And people get this wrong all the time. They think that observation is what create the waves, but these experiments have been done multiple times since then, and it's not actually the observation which creates the waves. It's just the way that the photons interact with the slits. So the interesting part here is that people will take a kind of cursory scientific experiment, and science is only as good as its controls. It's only ever going to be as good as its controls. And so you do a controlled experiment and you can get distinct and different results, which you did in the double slit experiment, which why it was inconclusive and more scientific data needed to be done. However, when you slap quantum in the name of something, right, suddenly you can talk about all sorts of shit that defy the laws of logic and the laws of what we consider to be physical truths like gravity, things like this. But there's not a lot of great proofs for these things.
Okay.
So it's what you're talking about is a pseudo scientific endeavor. But let's assume for a second, let's just grant it, right? Because it's no fun to just refute an argument. You need to grant the argument and then destroy it twice. Otherwise, where's the fun there? So we'll just grant that this is true. Well, if it is true and things only operate under the eye of observation at the photon level, that would give you evidence for metaphysical truths, which would actually be more of a proof for a metaphysical being than it would be for a complete physical reality, which would give more proofs to the laws of logic being something which are tangible and real and not just a product of the mind.
Holy shit, man. Holy God, man. Jesus Christ. Wow. I was not ready for that. I was not ready for that answer. Siege D on Discord says, does Andrew know the divorce rate in the Orthodox Christian Church?
I don't know it off the top of my head, no, but it's low. It's quite low for so this is the case with all denominations. So here's how it works.
Okay.
The divorce rate with Protestant Christians particularly is high, but that's because the self-identification of Protestant Christians is high. So meaning most people, their default setting is that they will self-identify as being a Christian. But you have to look into the data a little bit more. And this is probably a reference to Pew Research. They're the ones who give out most of the data on these various surveys, things like this, though he could have another source. But either way, the source is going to say this. The more religious a couple is, meaning the more they practice their religion, they go to church, they're participating in the community, they participate in the sacraments. In other words, religion is actually a very meaningful and constructive part of their life. Right. You'll find that their divorce rates are, in some cases, only 5 to 10% in comparison to the rest of the general population.
Wow.
That is the case with Protestants. That is the case with Catholics. That is the case with Orthodox. That is the case with all of the divorce rates when it comes to religion. Remember that self-ID, they try to use the no true Scotsman argument. Well, you can just say somebody's not a Christian. But the thing is there is actual criteria for being a Christian, which is following Christian ethics and the ideals of Jesus Christ. And you would say, and I think I would say, and everybody would say, that community participation inside of your church and things like this and following those doctrines is definitely a part of Christianity. It can't just be self-ID or it has no meaning.
Ken Rose with the $5 super chat. I don't have the Don DeMarco button. Let me shift gears here just for a second, if you will. So you've recently become your notoriety, speaks for itself. I've been in this space now, good Lord, going on 10 years. And of course, the bigger you get, the more criticism, the more hate you get, et cetera, et cetera. How does Andrew Wilson handle criticism?
Fuck him.
And this is just just guys talking. Just how do you handle criticism?
Fuck them. That's how I handle it.
Okay.
Fuck them. And I like to drag critics up and pummel them. So the thing is like, I've at every creator anywhere online, I think that other than Destiny, I am the most likely to engage directly with critics and debate them on their ideas versus mine and their criticisms versus mine. But people don't really have much that they can say, right? Like the Crucible does big giveaways. We actually give it all away. The Crucible sells tons of merchandise. You always get your merchandise. The Crucible sells different things. You always get what we say you're going to get. There's never ever. In other words, you'd have to kind of run out the victims. Like, where are the victims? Where are the people who've been victimized? Where are the people who have had the problems that have been unaddressed? And if they do have problems that are unaddressed and they're legitimate grievances, why not just go ahead and fix them then? If there's a problem, you know what I mean? Or an oversight or a fuck up or something like that. I'm only human, right? So how about we just go ahead and fix it, right? Whatever the grievance is. And so in many ways, it takes the power away from your haters, right? Because most of the things that people say online about other personalities is rooted in two causes. The first cause, of course, is jealousy.
Yes.
And that's a big one. And then the second cause is rooted in ignorance. They just don't know what they don't know. They saw a couple of clips or something like this. They don't really understand your content. They don't really understand what it is that you're talking about, things like that. So in both cases, you can cure both of these problems. The way that you cure the first problem of jealousy is by laughing at them and kind of rubbing it in their face. And that drives them insane and makes me happy. But the second way, when it's just ignorance, is you just have a conversation and you elucidate the ignorance, and that usually takes away the problem as well. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be some people who are lunatics, because there's going to be. Yes, by the way, according to Pew Research Center, the divorce rate among Christians in the United States is around 9%.
Wow. Holy shit. I did not know that. Why?
Yeah, my wife just sent that over.
Yeah, why does everybody think it's 50%?
Well, they're talking about Protestant sex.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And is there a different now this is my religious ignorance. Is there a difference because I think that, as far as I know, there's Catholicism and everything else is Protestantism. So is Orthodox Christianity, is that different from Protestant, or is it under that same umbrella?
The first schism happened between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church.
Absolutely right.
The second schism happened between the second schism was a Catholic schism for Protestants. Okay. Martin Luther did the second schism. The first schism, the Orthodox claimed the Catholics broke off from them. The Catholics claimed the opposite. So the Orthodox Church is the oldest Church of Christ it's the original Church of Jesus Christ.
Okay, very good. Gordzilla 37 with the $5 Canadian super chat. Wait, Canadian? I'm an idiot. Says Andrew, have you ever heard of Ibel? I heard we all should hail Ibel. I have no idea what.
We all should hail Ibel, yes.
Okay, what is that? Is that a? I mean, forgive my ignorance here.
We don't talk about Ibel.
Oh, okay. We do.
You hail Ibel. You don't speak about Ibel. You just hail Ibel.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The common denominator of every personality in this space is that we are all anti-feminist. We understand that feminism. I believe that feminism is the worst thing to happen in the history in the history of mankind. I think it's destroyed families, it's destroyed men, it's destroyed women, and most of all, it's destroyed children. Give me your elevator pitch on what you think of feminism, and is it ever going to be complete? Is it ever going to go the other way? Because right now it doesn't seem like it is. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what is feminism?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
To me, feminism has, I think, a few different pillars. I think one of the pillars of feminism, and I think Rollo talks about this a lot, is giving men all of the responsibility while simultaneously taking their authority and doing the opposite for women. I think that feminism, at first, I guess first wave feminism, I think it sought to give women a choice. If you don't want to be at home, raising kids, you can now go into the workforce. But now it's been bastardized and it's evolved in so many different ways that it is quite literally a hate group, and nobody's winning. That's the way I see it. I think that feminism, is the worst thing to happen in human history. That's what I think.
So first wave feminism, the idea of seeking to give a woman a choice, do you think that was good, that we should have given women a choice?
In hindsight, clearly not.
In hindsight, clearly not. So would you take their choice away now?
Oh God, I don't think we could.
But if you could.
Good Lord, man. I guess not. Because I don't know. Maybe I'm
so then you're a feminist.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right. Well, I mean, that would be the entailment, wouldn't it? So if the idea is feminism's awful, first wave feminism sought to give women a choice. It's like, okay,
we saw
well, that's the root. Well, that's the root. So then if we have the root and I ask you, well, right now, if you could, would you take the choice? You say no, then you would be rooted in first wave feminism, right?
Okay. Yeah. What do you think feminism is?
Feminism is very simple. It's all feminism is a dismantling of patriarchal systems, and that's it.
Okay.
It's just a dismantling of patriarchal systems. So the idea here, well, in the furtherance of egalitarian systems.
Okay.
So the idea here is that to be oppressed, there must be an oppressor. So if there must be an oppressor, and feminists are oppressed, who are women oppressed by? Well, there's only one other sex, so it must be men. So if the other sex is men, right, then men must be the oppressors. So in this case, they're pointing to that and saying that is patriarchy. And since men are in charge of all the systems, those systems are necessarily patriarchal. These patriarchal systems must be dismantled for the purpose of egalitarianism, meaning that women need to be at the same level as men when it comes to responsibility and authority and all of this type of stuff.
Oh my God, yeah, no way. And it's interesting because I remember watching you, I think on the Whatever podcast, or it was, I think you were debating with one woman who said that she was all about bring back the patriarchy and this and that and the other, and you literally systematically dismantled her, really exposed her as sort of a card-carrying feminist. And I think you were also in a debate one time about allowing women to vote. And I was always of the mind, okay, I'm not going to be this repeal the 19th Amendment guy because there's no way that's going to happen. Blah, 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 blah. Women should be able to vote, da, 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 da. But the way you explained it, and I forgot how you explained it, but the way you broke it down, like piece by piece, it's like you asked the woman, do you think women should vote? And she says, well, yes. And so I think you said, okay, well, giving women the right to vote, it almost certainly supersedes, male authority in our electoral systems, with our elections and things of that nature. And so now I don't think women should vote. I used to be of the mind that, hey, you can't really take away their voting privileges, but the way you explained it, and I'm not smart enough to remember and regurgitate this stuff, the way you explained, the way you took them around you took them around, and could you explain that for my audience and mainly me, why?
I think the woman that you're referencing for this particular debate, there was a micro debate which happened on whatever, was between me and a woman named Deborah. And
yes,
she was a
yes.
she was a TPUSA girl. So
oh God, yes.
in this particular debate, we were discussing patriarchy and the idea of responsibility absent authority. And so if what I asked her is, if it is true that you reject or that you hecking love the patriarchy, right? Then why is it that you would want the responsibility of voting instead of the patriarchy having the responsibility of voting? Because if that is the case, that I hecking heart the patriarchy, and I hecking want to stay home and hecking cook sourdough starters and do my nails while men have all the responsibility,
right?
Then why is it that you're demanding that women have equal responsibility? And her answer to this was to say, well, because men aren't to be trusted with authority, and since they're not to be, and so because there's so many soy men who can't be trusted with authority, women necessarily need to have authority, which actually means that she does not support the patriarchy at all and was lying, right? So the thing is that's a consequence of the position.
Why do you think there are so many? Because a good friend of mine, Pearl Davis, I'm sure you know who she is. She really hates female tradcons, because female tradcons, they share, I think they're undercover feminists. Why do you think so many women come out and they say, well, I'm pro patriarchy, when they really are just sort of feminists in disguise? Is it because they want the attention, they want the notoriety? In your opinion, like, why are there so many, and they're usually pretty attractive, the Lauren Chens of the world, et cetera, et cetera. Why do these women exist?
They make a simple category error. And the category error is they conflate feminism with woke. They think that woke is the same as feminist, and it's not. Woke ideology is rooted in progressive idealism, and it's based around the various ideas that subtle shifts in language and behavior can create intersectional dynamics of power, which are problematic. Right. And so they take offense on behalf of the people who aren't even offended, in order to, in some way, right these kind of interpersonal wrongs which only exist in their head. So this is woke ideology. It's intersectionalism, which is it's based around kind of the subtle and intuitive microaggressions and things like this that they perceive as happening in society between various power dynamics within groups, right? Within racial groups, sexual groups, LGBTQ, preference groups, right? All of this. That's woke. And so those people are unhinged, because if you start to look for every single type of power dynamic, which is off, right, then you're never going to see anything but power dynamics, which some people have power over others in every single group.
Sure, right.
Because that's a necessary condition to being alive. A necessary condition to being alive is that in order for me to thrive, there's necessarily going to be some people who have a necessary amount of power over me inside of a society, given a certain situation. This could be police officers, perhaps the tax man, perhaps state officials, things like this, or perhaps somebody's boyfriend who I really pissed off when I tried to grab his girl's ass. Right now, he has a bit of power over me.
Right.
Or perhaps another group who we don't want involved in a church, and now we're in the power domain, and so this is discriminatory. So anyway, if you start looking for that, you'll find it, and you become unhinged. So once that happens, you become one of those sky screaming lunatics. Now, feminism is a part of wokeism, meaning there's no woke women who aren't also feminists.
Right.
However, that does not mean a feminist needs to be woke, and they conflate the two. So they don't realize that they themselves are feminists. They're just not woke feminists. They're not looking for those power dynamics being off in every single situation. They just haven't thought of the entailment of their position, that feminism is not just the idea of, well, I hate men and scream at the sky because, I heckin' heart, the intersectionalism. That's not feminism. It has nothing to do with feminist theory at all.
Okay, very good. Man, I think we are all getting smarter here. Manny Fresh with the $10 super chat says, in my opinion, feminism is simply neo-Marxism. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think that Marxism promotes feminism, but feminism itself is something that you can even say came out of Marxism. So Marxists did push feminism quite a bit, but really what pushed it over the top in the United States was the occults, which came out of Protestant sects Those were the people who really ended up pushing. They were the original architects and authors of feminism. Though I do agree that that neo-Marxism is now part and parcel of what feminism is, and there's a lot of overlap between the ideologies, particularly when it becomes egalitarianism and people are interchangeable widgets. But feminism in many ways is even more invasive because the system itself is always elusive. It's based around power dynamics nobody can even do anything about. Within Marxism, you might be able to do something with financial power dynamics. Like if you make $500 and I make 200, right? I can take X amount of your 500 and now we have an equal amount of money. So even if that's a really bad idea, we can still at least do that, right? So that's something we can do. You can't do the types of things which would be necessary to create egalitarianism between men and women because you have strength differentials and you have different ways of thinking and you have different, like you're not interchangeable with them. So you can't even really do anything about it. Feminists have recognized this problem of compatibility even within Marxism and have stated multiple times. There's feminists, for instance, who want to begin lowering the testosterone level of males at birth. So that the strength equalization is the same, right? And things like this. So
that is absolutely crazy, man. Jesus Christ. Ben with the $10 super chat says, people like Andrew because men want to be religious, but the idea of a Protestant, quote, Jesus is my boyfriend, or how you have to be a pushover if you're a Christian, Andrew shows the, quote, original way. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, it's true. So if you look at, I'll explain the split.
Okay.
Protestantism is somewhere around 60-40. The Catholic Church is around the same, right? Now, don't quote me. This isn't direct. I'm just explaining that it's lopsided.
Okay.
Women versus men.
Okay.
So women in the Protestant Church, about 60%, right, to 40%.
Yeah.
I think it's actually even higher than that. And I think Catholics, it's closer to 60-40. But again, these are just rough estimates.
Okay.
But it is lopsided. Orthodoxy is the other direction. It has more men in it than it does women because it adheres to the actual patriarchal nature of Christianity. This is not to make the statement that women are not valued inside of Christian ethics. They are, and they should be. But the idea that this is not a patriarchal faith is just absolutely insane. And you see a lot of Catholic feminists who can't even reconcile this. Imagine the patriarchal nature of Catholicism itself, where you have a pope who can only be a male as the Godhead, who is giving out papal decrees, right? He is the representation of, let's say, the mouth of God in this particular, hierarchical structure. That moves down to his bishops, who are in a hierarchy, and to cardinals and to priests, and et cetera. And all of them must be men within this hierarchy. So these are patriarchal faiths, and they always have been patriarchal faiths. Same thing, even the apostles, all of it, right? All of the teachers of Christianity have always been men, and they always will be. So what has happened is, as Protestants have perverted the word of God, they have made things like female pastors a thing. They've made women as the kind of new voice of the church is absurd. It's not that women's concerns, right? Their concerns inside of churches shouldn't be adhered to, but they shouldn't have any authority whatsoever. And they've never. So that's not the way it's supposed to work. So what happens is, oftentimes women will try to browbeat me into what I call the cult of be nice, where they reduce the entire religious ethical framework of Christianity and Christian ethics to just be nice.
Turn the other cheek.
Well, it's just be nice. It's a motto, and it's based around a culturally relative version even of what niceness is. And so ultimately, it has nothing to do with Christian ethics at all. They're just trying to weaponize your faith against you. And it's perfectly acceptable for you to tell them to shut up, sit down, mind their business, go away, tell them that they're dumb, that they're retarded, because ultimately what they're doing is perverse. Right. They're doing something which is perverse. And so you really don't have to put up with it. And I think you even have a duty not to.
And not only that, I think, making women leaders in the church, that's part of your definition of feminism, is the dissolving male authority, breaking up the patriarchy. We got quite a few super chats. CHD with the $5 super chat says, thanks for answering my questions, BPF. I think it's called, quote, catch and release game. Glenn explained it, spinning plates without sleeping with them. I guess that's what he was talking about. I think he's referring to you getting experience with women without having to get your dick wet. In other words, I think that's what he's probably referring to.
Yeah. Well, why do you need to feed into degeneracy in order to, like, it's such a bizarre take that you have to sleep with women in order to get experience with them. When I asked Myron about this directly, he also didn't really have an answer as to why you needed to sleep with them.
And it's
why is that a necessary kind of entailment of the position of dating? It seems to me that courtship and dating, you can get to know somebody really well.
Yeah.
And people bring up bizarre issues with this. I can even give you some counter arguments that I've heard. Okay. Here's a good one: sexual compatibility. You want to make sure that you're sexually compatible with the other person. What's so bizarre about this, though, is that isn't the goal to get a virgin?
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So if the goal is to get a virgin, how do you test out sexual compatibility? Right. That's a contradiction in terms. But let's assume for a moment that they're not a virgin, right? Okay. Even then, almost every man on earth is compatible sexually with every woman on earth.
That's absolutely right.
The reason that is necessary is because otherwise our genetics would not be able to continue and we would expire. So
yes. Oh my God, yes. Yeah, the female orgasm is irrelevant to the actual purpose of sex, which of course is to reproduction. Is for reproduction. And it also and I think you won me over with this argument, and I think you are 1,000% right. We got a lot of men out here who are incels and virgins. They know, trust me, these boys know female nature inside and out, and they've never had sex before. So you don't have to be some sex demon to figure out who women really are. Because just like you said, sex is in the grand pantheon of all relationships, it really is kind of the least important part in terms of getting to know someone. You don't have to have sex with a woman to get to know her. And I think some of us, and listen, I've been down that road. I've slept with more women than I care to admit. But the reason why is just because, and I'll admit it, I just didn't have dick discipline. See a pretty woman, I want to go have sex with her, blah, 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 blah. And what it comes down to is I think there are a lot of alcoholics who say, well, the reason I'm an alcoholic is because something happened to me when I was younger, or I had this trauma. And that could all well be true. But there are a lot of alcoholics out there who just like to get drunk.
Yeah. So this is a good way to put it, right?
Okay.
I drank because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm not an alcoholic by any metric, but I like to drink because I enjoy it.
Sure.
And I'm sure most of these guys like to have sex with a lot of women because they enjoy having sex with a lot of women. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the position is justified. It doesn't mean that the position itself makes any sense, or that by not engaging in this, you wouldn't actually have better outcomes and better societal outcomes. And as men, we understand we have greater duties, not just to ourselves, but to our community. And our community becomes our country. And so all of this is an extension of our own genetic gene pool and also of our own kind of, wide birth family. So it's going to always go like this. Your family is the most important thing.
Right.
If you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of your family. Your respect in status, your social status climbs astronomically. Most men, even degenerate men, have some kind of respect for a person who has a family.
Sure.
Right? Sure. At least some rudimentary respect. However, most men who are high men of status, who own large businesses, corporations, the real people who can help you out in life, often look for men who have families because it shows and demonstrates that they have some sense of duty, responsibility, and they probably won't leave their job or workplace to be dependent on their income from that job. So they're probably a much safer bet than single men. So there's a status which happens with that. We start at the baseline family unit. But then what about the community itself? Right. Well, when men have a greater duty to the community, they become leaders inside of that community just by virtue of who they are and what they're doing. Perhaps they're assisting with charitable events, or maybe they're event coordinators, or perhaps they're primary people of interest at their church, things like this. But they're fulfilling some kind of duty, and that'll give them status inside of the community as well. And then this extends into the political. Maybe perhaps you are a letter writer or somebody who wants to be involved in campaigns at the national level, right? And then so all of these are status jumps, but it all starts with the idea of a very connected family unit and a nuclear family unit. Now, does that mean that when you say nuclear family, that grandpa can't come live with you if he's sick. Of course not. Grandpa can
Right.
come live with you. Does that mean your kids need to be out of the house by the time they're 18? Of course not, especially not in this economy.
No.
And is cross-generational family units or bicentennial farms, things like this, appropriate? Of course.
Mhm.
When we say nuclear family, all that we're talking about is this. We're talking about a primary structure where there's a mom and a father. They have some kind of deep connection with each other. They both put the welfare of their children and each other before themselves.
Right.
And when they do that, that family unit is going to be bonded and very strong. And then that opens up the avenues for community. Now, what is the community's duty to you? Well, the church community's duty to you is to help support you through times of trouble and strife, to assist you in your marital problems, to even assist you in financial straits, dire straits, help you perhaps through nepotism and other things, get various jobs that you might need, and things like this, so that you can perform your duty back, right?
Right.
So that's the community's kind of duty back to you. So men understand this almost intuitively. And one of the things that drives us insane and has driven men completely insane over the last 40 years or so is that the community itself is vanishing. Example of this, the reason Gen Z is so fucked up. When I was a kid, I would play marbles in the street. I'd play like I would go out with my friends and we had little bags of marbles. And we would play in the gutter, you know what I mean? We would play marbles. And we would we'd play basketball. We do all kinds of things, right? I would go out during the day and I wouldn't come back till it was dark, basically.
Leave the house,
till the street lights came on. So the thing is that gives you a good sense of community.
That makes perfect. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that gives you a good sense of community.